So I probably have the only organization title that is not self-explanatory. Everybody else is a university or an agency, and you all are going, why is an eye doctor up here? We're not an eye doctor, I swear. We do get a lot of calls asking if we take Medicare, though. Seriously. So Valley Vision is a 501c3 located in Sacramento. Our projects span most of the valley, though, where the majority kind of are in the Sacramento region. But, for example, Ag Plus and some other projects do span the whole valley. We work in a variety of subject areas. The commonality across our projects isn't the subject matter, but the fact that most of them require cross-sector collaboration. So there's no one agency or organization that can come up with the solution, but it takes a lot of people sitting down at the table together to come up with a solution. We help bring them to the table. And I am thrilled to be here and be part of this conference because this is exactly what we do. I liked the Chancellor talking about this as a convergence. This is right up our alley. So thank you very much for including me as part of this. Valley Vision I'm going to talk about one of our particular projects and kind of touch on some other ones. And honestly, I think I'm the last panelist today, and I think at this point I'm really kind of reinforcing a lot of things that you've already heard. But let me go ahead and share this with you. So we were funded by the California Emerging Technology Fund, Sonny Wright McPeak, and Gladys. Along with Fresno State, which Ish talked about, and Eduardo back there is my counterpart at Fresno State who's been working on this, to basically test the efficacy of broadband-enabled technologies for us in Yolo County, for them in Fresno County, focusing on 3 different crops, tomatoes, almonds, and grapes, which happen to be the top grossing crops in Yolo County, according to the 2016 crop report. And there were kind of 3 different parts of this study. The pilot study itself, a grower's survey, and kind of a state of the research or lit review. And I have had a very difficult time finding studies that do kind of what we were trying to do. And I think what Eduardo has probably done very successfully through this project is really showing the efficacy of broadband with a control study of just that broadband. I think we all kind of intuitively know that these technologies work, but actually having that hard data, I've had a very hard time finding those studies. And I've got really good people on it now helping me to look for them. And this is just, I threw up some pictures of different ag technologies that I thought looked cool. So before I talk about some of our findings, I wanted to veer off for a second into a project that came about because of our work on the AgTech Pilot, as well as our work with the Broadband Consortium. As has been mentioned, we are the regional coordinator for the Broadband Consortium in our region. We got a chance to partner with CSU Chico, the Geographical Information Center. They were funded by the Internet Society, the SF Bay chapter of the Internet Society, to do mobile broadband testing and mapping in Yolo County. As you can tell, Yolo County gets used a lot for a lot of different kinds of testing, and part of it is because they did the strategic broadband plan, and they're a little bit ahead of a lot of other areas in doing this kind of work and looking at these issues. The Geographic Information Center has tested at 155 sites across Yolo County that were mostly publicly accessible. And then from that data, they narrowed down to 3 different areas where they wanted to do more in-depth testing. And they've worked with 3 different farms there. And we've been able to, our part of it has kind of been able to help them make the contacts with the farmers and with different folks in the county. They are, I think, still analyzing that data. And Susan Straken is here from the Geographic Information Center. She is the program officer on this project and can give you a whole lot more detail and information. But you could tell from the question she asked earlier about whether or not the Cal Speed testing can be used to basically disprove some of the FCC's data. She actually knows what she's talking about with the testing and the mapping. but they have already done, even though they are still analyzing some of the results, they've created some really cool maps. And this is really important. This can be replicated anywhere. This is just Yolo County, but all of this work can be replicated anywhere throughout the state. This is a heat map showing the combined download speeds of the major providers in Yolo County. This was the data that they then used to pick the 3 other areas to do more in-depth testing from. And they have a lot more maps, and as I said, Susan can provide you with more information, more detailed information about that. So going back to the project Valley Vision has been working on with the CETF funding. One of the components of it, as I said, was a growers survey. And originally we were just going to reach out to about 15 growers to do this survey. We had an opportunity through a partnership with the Yolo County Ag Commissioner so how many farmers are in the room? Let me take a step back. We have a couple of farmers in the room, not a whole lot. So you all know that you get a letter every year from your county ag commissioner requesting information that goes into the annual crop report for that year. Mandatory forms, you're required to fill those out. He's required to send them to you. So we were able to collaborate with the Yolo County Ag Commissioner this year to add our grower survey to that letter. So the survey basically went out to 800 farmers. Now, they're in the middle of filling out all of these mandatory forms that they don't actually have the broadband to sit and do, and so I actually have stories of them having to go to the Starbucks to sit and fill out these forms. So we got about 100 responses. That's where it's going with that. Which is a 12.5% response rate, and for a survey that big, that's a pretty good response rate. Of those responses, 27% said they had no coverage at all. 73% had some coverage, although many of those were from hotspots, and really farmers are out there MacGyvering. They're putting together these different connections from bits and pieces that they have and just creating something that works for them. It's also important to remember that most farmers, at least up in that region, don't farm on contiguous land. They have fields, they farm over here on, this 100 acres, they farm over here on this 50 acres and over here on this 300 acres. So they may have 100% coverage on those 100 acres and absolutely no coverage on this 300 acres. So that kind of, that affects some of these results as well. Nobody said they had 100% coverage across all of their fields. We also asked how broadband is used, and that's been covered a lot today from Robert and Gabe, and some really good slides. A lot of it was the responses were what you would expect: irrigation monitoring, chemical inputs. The one that was surprising to us, and this has been mentioned a couple of times, but not that much, it was about the food safety and theft monitoring. And with the amount of regulations that we now have about that, I would actually have expected to hear more from that. We heard about it a couple of times, but not a whole lot. And if you think about, we work with AgStart, which is an AgTech incubator. A lot of the new technologies that are being developed that we hear about have to do with reducing water use, reducing chemical inputs, that part of the equation. We don't hear as much about technologies being developed, at least at the scale that we're talking about, for food safety and theft monitoring and those things. And it may be partly because of the broadband issue, because those things do require so much broadband. We've heard this a lot today. This was one of our real key findings, both from the grower surveys, from the closing interviews that I've done with the farmers that participated in the pilot, and just from conversations I've had with farmers throughout this project, is the need for education, and not just the education about how to use a particular technology. Obviously, there's going to be learning involved there, but the need for... My understanding, and I'm not a farmer, is that farming with those technologies is a different kind of farming. And if you don't have broadband, you don't know what you're missing. I think we all pretty much agree that these ag technologies, the broadband-enabled technologies, are very much needed in order for the state to stay competitive, in order for agriculture to keep going in our state. And so the need for farmers to understand, for growers to understand how they can benefit from this and how to use these technologies is really important. And even the farmers that are using it, they're so inundated with technology and with data, they may not have the time to figure out how best to use all of it and how to maximize it and make it really work for them. You know, this is one farmer. This is David, whose picture is up there. These are just 3 of the different kinds of technologies that he uses. And, you know, he's on the younger side, so he's a pretty easy adopter of technology in the fields that he has coverage. He doesn't have coverage in all of his fields. But he's a pretty easy adopter of it, and even he has said that he's had trouble really understanding how he can maximize the use of all of this data and all of these technologies. So the one other piece that I wanted to leave you with, and again, this has been mentioned, and I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but I'm going to go ahead and mention it anyway. When I guess really the larger providers and possibly the smaller providers as well look at ROI and think about where they're going to invest their dollars. One of the main variables they look at is household density. And obviously, by definition, rural is not household dense. As much as we need to think about that, we're talking about households because we're talking about education, we're talking about hospitals and telehealth and all of these other things that affect all of these people. Actually, the farmer that I showed the picture of, David, has a child in either 2nd or 3rd grade. It was one of the grades that they start standardized testing. Standardized testing is all online. So her class, which should have been a 2-hour test, took 6 hours because the internet kept going down. So, and imagine sitting there with 3rd graders for 6 hours. So as much as this is about households and all of the things that go along with that, it's also important to remember that these are farms, these are economic units. They're not just households, they're businesses. And they provide goods and services and jobs for the local economy. They put money back into the local economy. So we need to take that in as part of the equation as well. So that was it. I will take questions as part of the panel.